The moment my mother yanked the phone from my trembling hands, I knew my life as I knew it was over. "You're never speaking to that girl again," she hissed, her eyes burning with a mix of rage and disappointment that cut deeper than any words. What she didn't realize was that by taking away my only connection to Willow, she had just set in motion a discovery that would make every member of my family unable to meet my gaze without flinching. I stood there in the middle of my bedroom, the same room where I had grown up believing I could be anything as long as I followed the rules. The screen of my phone went dark in Mom's grip, Willow's last text still glowing faintly in my mind. "I love you. We'll figure this out." Mom didn't even look at the message. She just powered the phone off like it was contaminated. "This ends today, Quinn. I raised you better than this." Dad waited in the hallway, arms crossed, saying nothing. My younger brother, Ethan, peeked from his door and quickly looked away. The silence in our Ohio suburb house felt heavier than any shouting match. I was 19, a sophomore at the community college 20 minutes away, and until that afternoon I thought I had kept everything perfectly hidden. Willow and I had been careful, late-night study sessions that were really drives to the park, whispered phone calls after everyone went to bed, never posting a single photo together. But one careless text I sent during lunch, "Can't stop thinking about last night," had popped up on the family iPad Mom sometimes used. That was all it took. She marched me downstairs and made me sit at the kitchen table, while she deleted every contact, every photo, every trace of Willow she could find. "You will not throw away your future for some phase," she said, voice steady like she was reading from a script she'd practiced in church group. Dad nodded along, adding only, "We love you too much to let this happen." Ethan stared at his cereal bowl, like it held the answers. I wanted to scream that this wasn't a phase, that Willow wasn't some experiment, that the way my heart raced when she smiled at me was the most real thing I had ever felt. Instead I just nodded, because fighting back right then would only make it worse. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the house so quiet I could hear the fridge humming downstairs. My fingers itched for my phone, for the simple act of typing "I'm sorry" to Willow. Without it I felt amputated. The next morning Mom handed me back an old flip phone from 2012. No internet, no apps, just calls and texts to approved numbers. "School, home, that's it," she said. "We'll check your grades weekly. If they slip, no college fund." I went through the motions at school like a ghost. Willow waited by my locker after third period, her dark curls tucked under a beanie, green eyes searching mine. "What happened?" she whispered. I told her in the bathroom stall, voice cracking, how Mom had stormed in, how the family now looked at me like I was broken. Willow pulled me into a hug that smelled like vanilla and safety. "We'll find a way," she said. "I'm not letting them win." But even as I nodded, I felt the weight of every lecture Mom had given me since I was 12. About sin, about God's plan, about how those people destroyed families. The days blurred. I borrowed my friend Sarah's phone during lunch to message Willow, deleting everything immediately after. Mom started driving me to and from campus herself, claiming it was quality time. At dinner she watched me like a hawk. "You seem distracted, honey," she'd say, passing the potatoes. I smiled the fake smile I had perfected, and said I was just tired from midterms. Inside I was unraveling. Every night I replayed the moment Mom took the phone, wondering if love was supposed to cost this much. By the end of the second week I started skipping lunch to sit in the library and write long letters to Willow on notebook paper, folding them into my backpack and passing them during the 3-minute window between classes when Mom wasn't watching. Willow wrote back the same way, pages filled with plans to meet at the old railroad bridge after dark, promises that we were worth fighting for. Those notes became my lifeline. Then came the night everything shifted. Mom had been acting strange all evening, quieter than usual. After I went to bed I heard her footsteps in the hallway. The next morning she called a family meeting before breakfast. Dad, Ethan, and I sat at the table while Mom placed my old phone in the center like evidence in a trial. "I was going to wipe it completely," she said, voice shaking for the first time. But I needed to understand why my daughter would choose this path. She had scrolled back through every message. Months of them. The last one I had managed to send before she confiscated it, the one I thought had never gone through because the signal dropped, was still sitting in the outbox. A 700-word outpouring I had typed in a panic the night she took the phone. pouring out every fear, every tear, every dream of a life with Willow. Mom's hands trembled as she read the opening line aloud. If you're reading this, Willow, it means they won. But I need you to know I would rather lose everything than lose you. The room went still. Dad's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. Ethan's eyes widened. And Mom, the woman who had always had an answer for everything, couldn't finish the sentence. Because the rest of that message contained every ugly truth I had never dared say out loud. How their constant prayers for my soul made me hate myself. How I had overheard her on the phone last year telling Aunt Linda that she would rather bury a daughter than have one who was gay. How the only time I felt whole was when Willow held my hand under the stars. She set the phone down gently, like it might explode. No one spoke. No one looked at me. The silence stretched until it felt like the walls were closing in. That was the moment I realized the message hadn't just been discovered. It had been a mirror, and my family couldn't stand to see their own reflections in it. Mom left the kitchen without another word. Dad followed her upstairs, muttering something about needing air. Ethan stayed long enough to whisper, "I didn't know it was that bad, Quinn," before disappearing to his room. I sat alone with the phone, the screen still open to my own words. Reading them now in the cold morning light made my stomach twist. I had written them in desperation, never expecting anyone else to see. Yet there they were, exposed like an open wound. I didn't go to class that day. Instead, I walked the 3 miles to Willow's apartment off campus, the old flip phone burning a hole in my pocket even though it couldn't text her. When she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me inside without questions. We sat on her tiny couch and I told her everything. The family meeting, the message, the way no one could look at me. Willow listened, then kissed my forehead. "They're ashamed because they know they're wrong," she said softly. "But you don't have to carry their guilt." That afternoon we made a plan. Small at first, I would use the library computers to email her, keep up appearances at home, wait for the storm to pass. But deep down I knew the storm was just beginning. When I got home that evening, the house felt different. Mom had cooked my favorite meal, pot roast and mashed potatoes, but no one spoke during dinner. The clink of forks was the only sound. Afterward, she asked me to help with dishes. "I read all of it," she said quietly, not looking up from the suds. "Every word. I didn't know you felt that way about us." I wanted to scream that of course she didn't know. She had never asked. Instead I said, "I didn't want you to." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks for the first time in my memory. "We're going to fix this as a family. Counseling. Church. Whatever it takes." The word fix landed like a punch. I dried the last plate and went upstairs without answering. The next week was a minefield of forced conversations. Mom scheduled a meeting with Pastor Reynolds. Dad tried awkward small talk about my classes. Ethan avoided me completely, which hurt more than the lectures. At night I lay awake replaying every family vacation, every holiday photo where I smiled on cue, wondering how much of me had been a performance. Willow became my only safe space. We met at the railroad bridge after midnight twice that week, kissing under the moonlight like teenagers who had nothing to lose. Each time I left her I felt stronger and more terrified. Then the betrayal came from the last place I expected. Ethan cornered me after school on Friday. "Mom found the notes in your backpack," he said, voice low. "The ones you passed to Willow at school." My blood ran cold. I had been so careful, but apparently not careful enough. Mom had searched my room while I was at the library. That night the family meeting was worse than the first. Mom laid the folded letters on the table like evidence. "How long has this been going on behind our backs?" she demanded. Dad finally spoke. "We trusted you, Quinn. This is more than a phase, it's deception." I looked at each of them, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and something inside me snapped. "You confiscated my phone because you couldn't handle who I am," I said, voice shaking but clear. "You want me to be the daughter in your perfect picture, but I'm not. I love Willow, and if loving her means losing all of you, then maybe that's the price." The words hung in the air. Mom's face crumpled. For the first time, she didn't have a Bible verse ready. That weekend I packed a bag. Willow had offered her couch until I figured things out. Mom stood in my doorway watching me fold clothes, silent tears streaming. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to chase you, she whispered. I zipped the bag and looked her in the eye. The same eyes that had once read me bedtime stories. I'm not asking you to chase me. I'm asking you to see me. She turned away first. I left before dawn on Sunday. The house was still dark when I closed the front door. Willow waited at the end of the block in her beat-up Honda, engine running. When I slid into the passenger seat, she took my hand and didn't let go until we reached her apartment. For the first time in weeks, I slept without nightmares. The first month away from home felt like learning to breathe underwater. Willow's apartment was tiny, one bedroom, a kitchenette that smelled like burnt toast, but it was ours. I slept on the couch until we pushed the furniture aside and shared the bed, holding each other like lifelines. College became my escape during the day. At night we talked for hours about everything we had hidden. Willow told me about her own coming out at 15, how her parents had eventually accepted her after therapy. I told her about the message, how its discovery had cracked open my family like an egg. But freedom came with its own weight. I missed Ethan's stupid jokes. I missed Dad's terrible pancakes on Saturdays. Most of all, I missed the version of Mom who used to hug me after bad days without asking questions. The silence from home stretched into weeks. No calls. No texts on the flip phone I still carried like a relic. Sarah from school said Mom had told the neighbors I was taking a break to focus on studies. The lie stung. One Tuesday, Willow surprised me with tickets to a local Pride event. Nothing big, just a small fair in the next town over. We walked hand in hand under string lights, eating corn dogs and laughing like normal 20-year-olds. For 3 hours I forgot about the empty chair at our family table. When we got back to the apartment, Willow pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple silver necklace with 2 interlocking circles. For us, she said. No matter what happens. I cried when she fastened it around my neck. That night we stayed up talking about the future. Maybe transferring to the state university together, maybe getting an apartment off campus. For the first time the future felt possible. The bubble burst on a rainy Thursday. I had just finished my shift at the campus bookstore when my flip phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Quinn. Ethan's voice cracked on the other end. Mom's in the hospital. She collapsed at church. They think it's stress-related. My knees buckled. Willow drove me straight to Mercy General, waiting in the parking lot while I ran inside. Mom lay in the bed looking smaller than I remembered, hooked to monitors. Dad sat beside her, eyes red. Ethan stood by the window. When I walked in, Dad stood up slowly. She's been having chest pains since you left, he said quietly. Won't admit it's because of everything. Mom's eyes fluttered open. For a long moment she just looked at me. Then she reached out a hand. I took it. I read that message every night, she whispered. Over and over. I keep hearing my own voice saying those awful things to Aunt Linda. I didn't know I was capable of that. We talked for 2 hours, halting, painful, honest. She admitted the fear that had driven her to confiscate the phone wasn't about me being gay. It was about losing the daughter she thought she understood. I thought if I stopped it fast enough, I could protect you from the world, she said. But I was really protecting myself from facing what I didn't want to see. Dad listened without interrupting. Ethan even cracked a small smile when I told them about the necklace. When visiting hours ended, Mom squeezed my hand. Come home for dinner Sunday. Bring Willow if she's willing. No pressure. Just dinner. I left the hospital feeling lighter than I had in months. Willow hugged me tight in the car. You did the hard part, she said. Now we see what they do with it. Sunday came faster than I expected. I stood on the porch with Willow beside me. Her fingers laced through mine. Mom opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes flicked to our joined hands, but she didn't flinch. Come in, she said. The table was set for 5. Dad carved the roast. Ethan asked Willow about her major. The conversation was awkward, full of careful pauses, but no one preached. No one confiscated anything. Later, while doing dishes with Mom, she said softly, I'm not saying I understand everything yet. But I'm trying. That message, it showed me how much pain I caused. I don't want to be the reason you stop looking at me the way you used to. I dried a plate, and for the first time in months I hugged her first. Life didn't magically become perfect after that dinner. Some nights I still woke up from dreams where Mom was yelling and Dad was locking the door. Willow and I argued sometimes. She wanted me to move in permanently. I worried about abandoning my family too soon. But we worked through it the way couples do when they've already survived worse. The real turning point came 6 weeks later. Mom called me one afternoon and asked if I would meet her alone at the park where Willow and I used to sneak off to. I found her sitting on the same bench, holding a small photo album. "I've been cleaning out the attic," she said. "Found these." She opened it to pictures of her and a woman I had never seen. Arms around each other, laughing at a college party in the 80s. Her name was Rebecca, Mom said. We were close. Closer than friends. My parents found out. They gave me an ultimatum. Cut contact or lose the family. I chose them. I buried it so deep I convinced myself it never happened. I stared at the photos, the pieces clicking into place. The way Mom had always pushed church so hard. The fear in her eyes when she took my phone. "I swore I would never let my child go through that pain," she continued. "But I ended up doing the exact same thing to you. When I read your message, it was like Rebecca was speaking through you. I couldn't run from it anymore." We sat there until the sun went down. She apologized, really apologized, for every lecture, every deleted text, every night I had cried myself to sleep. "I can't change the past," she said, "but I can change how I parent from now on. If you and Willow want to come for Christmas, the door is open. No conditions." That night I told Willow everything. She listened quietly, then said, "Your mom is braver than mine was at first. That counts for something." We drove to my parents' house the next weekend as a couple. Ethan greeted Willow with an awkward fist bump. Dad asked her about her car's mileage like it was the most normal thing in the world. Mom hugged us both. The tension was still there, but it felt different. Like something we could work through instead of something that would destroy us. College finals approached. Willow and I studied late, sharing headphones and coffee. One night she looked up from her laptop and said, "Whatever happens with your family, I'm here. But I need you to know I'm not asking you to choose between us. You can have both." Those words lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. The semester ended with me passing every class, a small victory that felt huge. Mom and Dad came to the ceremony. When my name was called, Mom clapped the loudest. Afterward, she pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you, Quinn. For everything." It was the first time in months the words didn't feel conditional. Winter break brought new tests. Willow's parents invited us for Christmas Eve. A loud, chaotic dinner full of aunts and cousins who asked zero questions about our relationship. It felt like breathing fresh air. The next day we went to my family's house. Mom had set 2 extra places at the table without being asked. She even bought Willow a gift, a soft scarf in her favorite color. Small things, but they mattered. Still, cracks showed. At church on Christmas morning, an old neighbor pulled Mom aside and whispered loud enough for me to hear. "You're really okay with this?" Mom straightened her spine and said, "I'm okay with my daughter being happy. The rest is between her and God." I nearly cried right there in the pew. New Year's Eve we spent at the railroad bridge, our spot. Willow and I watched fireworks explode over the town, wrapped in the same blanket. "Remember the night you left home?" she asked. "I was terrified I'd lose you forever." I kissed her temple. "You helped me find me." But the message that had started everything still haunted me. One night in January I opened my laptop and read the draft I had saved. Every word was still raw. I printed it, folded it, and drove to my parents' house alone. Mom was in the kitchen baking. I handed her the pages. "This is what I couldn't say to your face back then," I told her. "I need you to read it again, knowing I'm not leaving this time." She read it right there at the counter, tears falling onto the paper. When she finished, she pulled me into the tightest hug. "I failed you," she whispered. "But I'm not failing anymore." Dad walked in, saw us, and joined the hug without a word. Ethan appeared a minute later, rolling his eyes but smiling. Group hug? Gross. But okay. That moment didn't erase the months of pain, but it built something stronger. Trust that had to be earned, not demanded. Willow and I started talking about getting a bigger place after graduation. Mom offered to help with the deposit if you'll let me. I said yes. Spring arrived early. Willow and I took a weekend trip to the lake, the first real vacation we'd ever had. We rented a tiny cabin and spent 3 days doing nothing but talking, laughing, and planning. On the last night, she asked me a question that changed everything. When you're ready, would you want to get married someday? Not now, just someday. I answered by kissing her, until we were both breathless. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Graduation came in May under a perfect blue sky. I walked across the stage with Willow cheering louder than anyone. My entire family sat in the front row, Mom, Dad, Ethan, all of them. Mom wiped tears the whole time. Afterward we took pictures. The 5 of us plus Willow squeezed together like it had always been that way. The summer after graduation brought the hardest choice yet. I got accepted to the state university for my bachelor's, 2 hours away. Willow got into the same program. The apartment we found was perfect, but it meant leaving my family again. Mom helped us pack the U-Haul without complaint. When everything was loaded, she stood on the driveway holding a small box. Inside was the silver necklace with the interlocking circles, the one she had secretly bought to match mine. For both of you, she said. So you never forget where you started. We hugged for a long time. I'm scared, I admitted. What if the distance brings back old fights? Mom smiled through her tears. Then we fight better. I've learned that much. Dad shook my hand, then pulled Willow into a hug too. Ethan punched my arm lightly. Don't forget to call idiot. As Willow and I drove away, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror, I thought about the message that had started it all. The one Mom had confiscated the phone to destroy. That message had nearly broken us. Instead, it had forced every single one of us to become better. We pulled over at the railroad bridge one last time. Willow turned off the engine. Ready for the next chapter? She asked. I took her hand, feeling the weight of every choice, every tear, every hard conversation that had led us here. I'm ready because of you. Looking back now, years later, I still don't know if I made the right decisions. I chose love over comfort. I forced my family to face truths they would rather have ignored. I hurt them, and they hurt me. But we all grew. So here's the question I still ask myself on quiet nights. Was it wrong to fight for Willow with everything I had, even when it meant making my family unable to look at me for a while? Or was their prejudice the real betrayal that forced me to choose?